So first thing we should point out about this tweet relative to the media is that it's kind of historic in a way because normally, for our entire decades, if not generations, announcements would be made through the media. The media is almost a bystander here watching it and reporting on it, but not the conduit.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Make That Make Sense, the game show that breaks down the weekly stories shaping the business of media. Today, we're chatting with an industry veteran that's going to help us make sense of the week in news. I'm super happy to bring on Ted Merz today. Ted is the co-founder of Pricing Culture, an AI content creation startup that uses artificial intelligence to create compelling narratives from large data sets within niche industries like venture capital and private equity. He's also the founder at Principles Media, a ghostwriting agency for business leaders. Previously, Ted spent 32 years at Bloomberg LP. His most recent role was the global head of news product, where he exited the company in 2022. And among many notable roles during his 32 years at Bloomberg, he was also the New York bureau chief. All right, let's get Ted on the show. Hey, Ted, thanks for coming on. Make That Make Sense.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
Ever since we met a couple of months ago and had a lovely lunch, I knew that you would be a desired guest to help break down the week in media. So glad we're doing it.
I am glad to be here, and I hope I can make it make sense. We'll see if
I hope
that's possible.
it's a challenging task, but I think you might be up for it. All right,
Okay.
let's get quickly into the rules and then we'll get into the show. So, on Make That Make Sense, we go through one headline, one tweet, and one deal in 15 minutes. Each section, meaning the headline, deal, and tweet, will last 3.5 minutes. You'll then have 1 minute to answer each trivia question and all topics from the last couple of days. All right, should we get to our
Okay.
headline?
Let's go. Yeah.
So,
All right.
this was obviously huge news that broke out of the AI and the media world. And it's been a development between AI and media companies for the last year or two. And now we have our first case that's actually gone on the side of publishers. Tell me, first of all, what do you make of the argument of fair use in this context when we're thinking about media companies and AI companies?
So my take has always been from the beginning that it was never fair use by the AI companies to basically take a ton of data and train their models. I was spent a lot of years at Bloomberg doing content deals, and that was never okay. Whenever we would do a deal, you'd have to explicitly say if you're going to use that content to train a model. So the fact that OpenAI and other companies basically just took whatever content they could find on the internet without really paying any attention to copyright or anything, I always thought that was crazy. But they did it. The models were launched. The water's under the bridge, and I think people were like, what are we going to do now?" So we've seen the last 2 years, a bunch of companies have filed lawsuits, like the New York Times and others. And the Reuters case was like one particular example of that. And I think it may set a precedent, and it's a good thing to look at. And it was a big deal because it was one of the first that went against the AI companies. And in this particular case, judge ruled that the content being used to train the model was specifically for a commercial purpose in that same space. And so the judge did not buy the argument that it was fair use. But I think it does, it's one of the reasons why you see AI companies trying to do deals with content producers to try to, put that behind them.
And outside of that, though, we're seeing a lot of interesting developments of how AI can help expand not only the reach of journalism, but how information is written and distributed. And you at Pricing Culture, your new company, are doing some really cool stuff in that space. So, how do you think that AI can help expand journalism's reach and help us to process information in the media world?
I think it's got a lot of potential. I think people have focused perhaps too much on using Gen AI to summarize. and kind of basically steal content that's out on the internet. But one of the opportunities that I think exists that we're pursuing at Pricing Culture is to use generative AI to create content out of text or out of data. So we take numbers in a spreadsheet and we create articles. So that is content that's never been written before. And when you think of all the information in the world, the information that's been written in text is like tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's so much more data than text. And so people are concerned because we're kind of run out of text to train on, but we have an enormous amount of content that we could be creating using data and numbers and so forth.
Well, it's an exciting time, and I think a lot of publishers are excited about this outcome. So we'll have to see if it serves as precedent going forward. All right, should we get to our tweet actually?
Okay.
So, obviously, this one did numbers on Twitter because everything that Elon Musk does numbers on Twitter. But this was Sam Altman's reaction to Elon Musk offering about $97 billion to buy OpenAI. And this was Sam Altman's
That's right.
witty response. So, first,
Right.
as somebody who's been in the media
On so
world,
many levels, yeah.
give me your
Right.
initial breakdown analysis of this, what this could mean beyond just two tech billionaires going at it on Twitter.
Oh, it's such a great story. I mean, so first thing we should point out about this tweet relative to the media is that it's kind of historic in a way because normally, I mean, for our entire decades, if not generations, announcements would be made through the media. So Elon Musk would have called the New York Times and said, I'm going to offer $97 billion for OpenAI. And there would be an article, and the next day there'd be a response. So we're kind of like even cutting out the media. Elon Musk just tweets and says, I want to buy OpenAI for 97 billion. And then Sam Altman just responds on the same platform. And so the media is almost a bystander here watching it and reporting on it, but not the conduit. And so I think one of the most important things to notice. And aside from the specifics about this tweet, it's one of the things I think we're going to see a lot more of. We're going to see a lot more corporate discussion, debate, deals going on via social media, playing out on the internet in a way that never happened before. It was much more traditional through the media, through lawyers. This is funny. The second thing is I think it also just demonstrates Musk is kind of demonstrating the irreverence of the platform offering $97 billion. You don't know if he's serious or not, if he has financing. He's just throwing it out there. You can't be held to that. It's a new world. And then Altman, as you said very wittily, comes back with 9.7 billion for Twitter, saying, "Oh, you think you're going to buy us? We're going to buy you." And obviously, at a fraction of the price that Musk paid, he paid 44 billion. So he's also sort of trolling him and making fun of him, or insinuating that Twitter's worth a fraction of what Musk paid for it. So you've got this back and forth, and I guess you think that the thing to think about on that crossed my feed was just that you're going to see a lot more of that going on. People debating, arguing in public. You see a fair amount on Twitter already, but not typically from CEO to CEO.
And I want to harp back on your first point about what this exchange means for media coverage, right? We kind of took out the middleman that was the media, and we have people going
Yeah.
direct to platform. This is a space in terms of ghost. This is very informal, but how do you think this type of huge public announcement being announced on Twitter, what does that indicate for the future of founder ghostwriting and founders interacting directly with their audiences instead of going through a media outlet?
So I think that there's unquestionably a value to having the capability and ability to be able to communicate directly with a large number of stakeholders. And I think one of the things back and forth with Musk and Altman, they obviously have both one, big followings, so they have the distribution, and number two, they have a lot of experience posting online.
Hmm.
And those are kind of two things. And when I think about most other CEOs, Most CEOs don't have that. Most of them don't have big followings. Most of them have not exercised that muscle. It's kind of like going to the gym. You know what I mean? Like you need to post online to get an audience, and you need to post online to know how to post online. So I think one way to look at it is in a crisis situation. Like this is well, it's like a crisis
A
situation.
mini crisis. Yeah.
Many crisis meaning when Musk wrote this, they turn over to Altman and said, "What's your response?" So I think a normal company would be paralyzed
Mm,
and would be like, okay, calling the lawyers. How do we respond? Do we put out a press release? What do we do? And I don't think that's going to be the future. 5, 7 years out, um, there's going to be an expectation, and there's going to be a sense that you're not really a leader unless you can respond directly and immediately.
mm.
Like otherwise, there's a kind of like, well, are you leading the ship or not? And I think that to be able to do that, you have to have some practice. So I think there's going to be a lot more of this communication. Um, and I guess you can say the communication is going to trend to be a little bit less formal,
Hmm.
a little more informal, and certainly, much more direct. Like I think the timing is important. If Musk sent this tweet to Altman, right? Let's imagine Altman didn't respond for a day or even days
Yeah.
while he huddled with his peers. I mean, it would have been a PR disaster. In fact, what happened, he turned it right around, and it was kind of Musk who didn't look so good because of the quick response and the witty response, and it was just. So I think that if you are not in a position to do that, that's like you'd want to learn how to do that.
I think that's absolutely correct. And I think it reflects a wider shift in media and a reflection that people trust people over brands. And so when people are making buying decisions, they're following people, they want direct access to who they're buying from, that person, and not a brand in front of it. So totally agree with it there. And this was obviously a funny example of that happening in real time. All right, should we go to our deal?
Hmm?
So,
Yep.
just for context here, Axel Springer, which also owns Business Insider, already had a majority stake in Morning Brew, but is now taking sole ownership after Morning Brew's CEO has stepped aside. I really want you have Axel Springer, which is a legacy media brand, and you have Morning Brew, which is kind of the first cohort of this new direct to consumer media brand in the business space. Give me more of a reflection on what Morning Brew's success in newsletters and then going to multimedia content says about the future of business media.
Yeah, I mean, Morning Brew is an incredible success story, and it was started by two guys basically in their dorm room in Michigan, and is now doing 70 million a year in revenue. It started as a newsletter, and then branched out. Now they do podcasts, they do um, lots of video and other things. I think that the first thing Morning Brew says is that the first thing that the success of the newsletter itself was an indication of the emergence of newsletters at that time. This is a
Mm-hmm.
number of years ago, but it was the clearest indication that they can be profitable. And I mean, honestly, there's no the battle for business news. You've got Reuters and Bloomberg and FactSet and lots of major companies, right? The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. So when you realize that two guys from their dorm room came in and just uh, took a chunk out of that market, I think it's a big indication that being nimble, being clever, they also use a lot of memes, a lot of humor. Um, they wrote in a completely, or for at the time, an unconventional way to that business audience. So, I mean, I think it had a lot of lessons when it came out. And when Axel Springer bought it, they bought the initial stake for at least $70 million. Um, it was clearly an indication that there's value, and that I think in a way that the legacy media realized that there were skill sets and things they couldn't do in
Mm.
terms of, I don't know, creating brands, connecting with a younger audience. Um, for Axel Springer, it was also an opportunity to get into the U.S. market. It had made investments, as you said, in Business Insider and others. So they wanted a piece of the U.S. market. They wanted certain skill sets. And I think it signaled the ascendancy of newsletters. And in my mind, I think the most important aspect there for media coverage is that it's like a niche coverage.
Mm.
Yeah, and that it was kind of a failure on the part of the legacy and large brands to be able to address that audience. And an audience emerged and they were unable to address it. And so I think that is continued to be the case. We have now all kinds of newsletters in the business arena. I call them newsletters, but let's say small niche or specialty publishers.
Yeah.
So the information, you've got a newcomer, which is newcomers of focuses on venture capital. Um, there's all kinds of things springing up there, and I think that's going to continue to be the case.
And I totally agree. I have my new personal favorites now from journalists that left those legacy media companies. Semaphore is great. I don't know if you follow that.
Mhm.
1440 is also great. And I think as we've seen, more and more people from these big legacy media brands are finding out that if you create a niche audience for yourself, over time, it can be very, very valuable if you really know your customer. So agree. And I think Morning Brew is the best indication of that. So, should we go to our trivia?
I'm terrified, but okay, yes.
Okay. First one is guess that company. This company signed a content partnership with OpenAI in January. It was
Hmm.
founded in 2016 and it has made a big push into local media.
Oh my God, I don't know. I don't know. They've done lots of content deals. I don't know. 2016. Oh, a Politico.
Close. The answer is actually Axios. Yeah, close. You're on the right track. All right, next one. This one's obviously very targeted. True or false? Bloomberg Television started in 1998.
Oh, that's false.
Mr. Bloomberg guy, could we tell us what year Bloomberg Television started?
It was either 94. I believe it was 94.
It it would be 94. When you
Okay.
spend 30 years at Bloomberg, I think you have a strong chance of getting that trivia question
No,
right.
yeah, but that's the weird part is like, was it 94, 93, 95? I mean, it was one of those.
Yeah. All right, Ted. Well, really appreciate you coming on and helping to break down some stories in the media world this week. I hope you enjoyed it and would love to get your expertise on another time as the media world continues to get crazier and crazier.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Good to see you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ted.